Can't angle things at least a little better here. All right. Maybe. All right. So we're on to Cypher System Rulebook Part 3. Our look at the Cypher System Rulebook, published by Monte Cook Games, written by Monte Cook, Bruce R. Cordell, and Sean K. Reynolds. We've already done Part 1 and Part 2. It's not really a review. It's kind of more of a deep dive because I've been kind of going through it pretty slow, a little more in detail. Last time we did the genres. Now we're on to the game mastering section. All right. So, I have other role playing games. I've obviously read other game mastering sections in other books, and I have to say that this one is pretty awesome. Okay, this one teaches you really how to be a Cypher system GM, in my opinion, because it if you've never GM'd like a narrative role playing game, a role playing game that focuses more on the narrative than heavy mechanics, then um, then you might need a little help with that, and this gives you help, and it gives you a lot more than just that. So enough of the preamble here. Let's kind of take a look at some things. The first thing to look at is creatures. All right. And so, as I've said in the previous videos, there's difficulty levels for everything, and so a difficulty level 5 means that you got to roll a 15 or better to beat that challenge. Well, creatures in the Cypher system run the same way. They all have a level, and you times that by 3. And did I say 5 earlier? No. Okay, yeah. You multiply it by 3, and you get the number that you need to hit that creature or defend against that creature. You dig what I'm saying? And each creature, it's given a name and a description. It gives you the level of the creature, gives its motive, its environment, its health, the damage that inflicts, the armor, movement, any modifications to its combat abilities or any other abilities, and then how it would act in combat and how it would act in interactions, which is really cool because it's not just like, hey, here's some history about the creature. It's I'm throwing this creature in my game. I want to know how to role play it correctly. And and it also includes how to use the creature in your game session, loot that it might drop, and then a GM intrusion. So looking at the first monster here, it's an abomination. It's a level 5, so you need to roll a 15 or better to hit it and defend against it. An abomination is a hideous bestial humanoid covered with thickened plates of scarlet flesh. Their eyes shine with the stagnant glow of toxic waste dumps. Standing at least 7 feet tall, abominations are drawn to movement. Always famished, they consume living prey in great tearing bites. Okay. Motive, it hungers for flesh. Environment, almost anywhere, hunting alone or in pairs. Its health is 22. Damage inflicted is 6 points. Armor 2. Movement short, so it can move a short distance. Modifications: might defense as level 6. Sees through deception as level 3. So, like I said, this monster has a level 5, but you would use these modifications in these circumstances. In a might defense, it's level 6, and it's not very smart, so you can lie to it. Combat. Abominations use scavenged weapons to attack prey at range, but probably switch to biting targets within immediate range. Targets damaged by a bite must also succeed on a might defense task or descend one step on the damage track as the abomination tears off a, a big piece of flesh and gulps it down. Dude, oh my goodness. Those who survive an attack must succeed on a might defense task a day later when they come down or they come down with flu-like symptoms. Those who fail begin the process of transforming into a fresh abomination. Dude, that's crazy. It's it's like a wasteland zombie. I dig it. Okay. Abominations regain 2 points of health per round and have +5 armor against damage inflicted by energy, like radiation and X-rays, gamma rays. All right, I see it. Interaction. Most abominations can speak and have vague memories of the people they were before transforming. However, those memories, motivations, and hopes are usually submerged in a hunger that can never be yeah. Sated. Yeah. Use. Abominations hunt ravaged wastelands and bombed out spacecraft. Hulks lurk in basements where mad scientists have conducted illicit experiments and haunt the dreams of children who've gotten in over their heads. All right, dude, that's creepy, man. So, and then it goes on, like here's a Chimera. He's a level 6. Carnophage, level 4. This one has a use when the PCs happen upon a location where the rules of space time are loose and malleable, or if the PCs trigger a Cypher or other device that interferes with time's regular flow, a clutch of carnophages may soon come calling. I dig it. And then loot that they might drop. And so there's quite a few creatures in here. I mean, it's a core book. It's not really a bestiary, but they do give you a really good amount of creatures. And before you even get to the creatures, they've sorted the creatures by level on page 313, and then they go through the creatures in alphabetical order as you look through them. I don't play with like gods, demons, devils, that sort of thing in my game, so I probably wouldn't use a demigod, or I would flavor it. Demons and devils are in the book. Like I said, I don't use those in my games. But dragon, who doesn't love a Dagron, right? Elementals, I think these elementals look pretty cool. Don't know if I'd use a fallen angel in my game either, but some of these other ones, a fusion hound, dude, imagine that in your post-apocalyptic game. You dig what I'm saying? It's a goblin. Who doesn't love a goblin, right? Oh, and they're level 1, so I mean, you just got to roll 3 or better to hit a goblin. It's not hard to hit a goblin. And let's see, yeah, they only have 3 health. So, yeah, they're squishy. But, I mean, that's what a goblin's supposed to be. You know what I mean? But because this is a universal role-playing game system book, I mean, you have creatures in here for pretty much any genre. I mean, you have golems and you also have aliens, you have kaiju and killer clowns. So they do a pretty good job in giving a wide array of creatures. And it's not, I mean, you can use them directly out of the book, but you can also use them as templates for making your own creatures. You dig what I'm saying? Like, okay, I'm not playing a fantasy game with an orc, but in the game I'm playing, there's going to be a race that's similar to orcs, and so I can use the orc page and use that as inspiration to make the creature that I'm working on. Oh my goodness, that's pretty crazy and terrifying. They even include, you know, some supervillains if you're doing a superhero game, you know. Um, Dinosaur, uh, vampires, a war droid, some pretty terrifying stuff. And then after the creatures, you hit a section on NPCs, you know. So last section was more monsters and stuff, and now you get into NPCs, people you might bump into and talk to or fight against, you know, an assassin, detective, guard, occultist, secret agent, you know. And these are just meant to be, I mean, you could, like, just like the creatures, you can use them straight out of the book, or you can use these as templates to make your own NPCs that the players will bump into. And they're statted out kind of just like the creatures were, where, you know, you have the level and what you need to hit, and then that gives their health, the damage they inflict, their movement, modifications, combat, interactions, use, and loot. So the NPCs have that as well. Move on to the section on ciphers. Now, of course, this is a super important section because it is the Cypher system, right? So this is a pretty important section. Of course, I can't turn the page. There we go. Talks about cipher limits, subtle ciphers. Subtle ciphers is, so a cipher is like a one-use item. Let's call it an item right now, a one-use item. And so if it's a fantasy game, you might think of it as like a potion of healing, right? That's a one-use item. And sci-fi, one-use items. Well, there's certain game genres where maybe an item isn't necessarily what you would find in that genre. Like a modern game, you might not find like physical ciphers. So subtle ciphers are ciphers, but they're not physical items. They're like a moment of inspiration. You dig what I'm saying? Or something akin to that. And then how you would, like, a moment of inspiration, good fortune. You know, it just they give you a list here, and how you would discover subtle ciphers. Because I mean, if something's like a potion of healing, it's kind of easy how you would discover that. You know, you know, find it in treasure or whatever, or buy it. But you know, how do you discover a moment of inspiration? You know what I mean? So it gives you guidance on that. And then manifest ciphers are actual physical items that are ciphers. So, you know, it could be that thermal detonator or whatever in the sci-fi game. You know, I'm just trying to come up with something. They give you guidance on a bunch of stuff relating to ciphers, manifest ciphers, duplicating subtle ciphers, using ciphers. So subtle ciphers you don't have to identify, but manifest ciphers you're usually going to have to identify to use them properly. You can try to use them without identifying them, and you know, good luck. Cipher levels and effects. Every cipher has a level, and sometimes the effect of that cipher is greater or lesser depending upon the level. You have normal and fantastic effects. Some ciphers make sense in a fantasy game, but they wouldn't make sense in a modern game. So some ciphers are so fantastic, so powerful, like you can suddenly fly. That would fit a fantasy game, but it wouldn't fit like a modern detective type game. So they do classify them as normal and fantastic, so you can pick the right ones for your game. You can kind of mix those two as well, and they give you guidance on that. You know, normal and fantasy kind of mixing. You know, what does a cipher look like? You know, the forms, and then you get into the cipher tables. manifest cipher forms, and then gives you the manifest cipher table. So you could sit here and you could just random roll manifest ciphers. Here's fantastic cipher table. So, you know, if you have a fantasy game, you can just roll off this table. If you're doing like a modern game without manifest ciphers, here's a subtle cipher table. So they've made it pretty easy for you to, you know, find the ciphers that you need for your game. You know, the only table I don't see in here is a table for normal ciphers, but I mean, you could just use the subtle ciphers for that. I think at least. And then now you're getting into the explanation of what each cipher does, and you have these little icons. So the kind of orange layer icon, that's for subtle ciphers. The blue kind of thermal detonator looking icon is a manifest cipher, and then the red fireball icon, that's for fantastic ciphers. So let's just take a look at one. Let's do the age taker. So level is 1d6 plus 4, so you'd roll a d6 and add 4, and that's the level of the cipher. Begins a process of rejuvenation that removes years from the wearer's physiological age over the course of I don't have my glasses on. The next 7 days, the wearer sheds a number of years equal to 3 times the cipher's level. The cipher doesn't regress physiological age past the age of 23. Okay, so that would be nice. You just become younger. I dig it. Shoot, I'd like one of those right now. But yeah, and there's the Cypher system, and some of them have tables because they do a variety of different things. You can have this is like a gas bomb, and it can have different gases in it, and you can random roll what gas comes in it if you want. Lightning wall, that sounds cool. Inferno wall, heat attack, nullification ray. So a lot of these look pretty cool, and you can drop them into your game. And this is the great thing about ciphers, right? So you can give them out to your players, and they can find them, they can salvage them, whatever, and they can use them, and they can just rock an enemy with them, or they can do something crazy with them, and guess what? Then they're gone. They're a one-use item, so they don't break the game, okay? The characters got to do something really cool, but the game isn't broken, right? They don't get to continually do that cool thing over and over and over and nuke every bad guy. You know what I mean? They got to do something cool. That's an awesome moment at the table. Everybody's high-fiving. That's awesome. But at the same time, like, they won't have that cipher for the next big bad guy. And so that's what I like, is that the characters get to do something cool, but the game's not broken at the same time. Power boost ciphers. So these boost like your abilities and stuff. Yeah, these are ciphers that boost your abilities. Like target boost. This cipher boosts an ability that affects a target at a range greater than touch. It can affect a second target within range. If the ability is an attack, make a separate attack roll for the second creature. Oh, I dig it. All right, and then so that was the cipher section. Now this is an awesome chapter. Okay, this is running the cipher system. I kind of got into a little bit of this earlier when I was talking about the game mastering section as a whole. I'm coming from a more mechanically heavy game, and coming to Cypher system and running Cypher system. I'm new to Cypher system and running it. It's not a purely narrative game, and it's not a mechanically heavy game. It's like the perfect blend of the two. And it has a heavy emphasis on story. And so coming from a mechanically heavy game, I got to learn how to GM a more narrative game. And this section right here really, really, really helps somebody learn how to be a narrative focused GM. I really love it. Obviously, to me, it's someone who has obviously ran the Cypher system a whole ton. They wrote the Cypher system, but ran the Cypher system a whole ton, and they have experience in it. And it's like they are speaking from that experience and helping you become a Cypher system GM and become more acquainted with. It's like a class on how to become a GM for a narrative game, and I dig that. Uh, right off the bat, the rules versus the story, and that's kind of like they purposely left things general so that you can fit things to your story. You know what I mean? Um, Setting difficulty ratings, they give you guidance on that. Impossible difficulty. So any difficulty rating 7 and above is technically impossible because 7 times 3 is 21. You're rolling a d20. You dig it? So you have to use effort or some kind of asset, some kind of skill to bring that difficulty down from a 7 to a lower number. False precision. That's like you don't have to be super precise with your difficulty numbers. Like one lock, if it's two normal locks, one isn't a 5 and one isn't a 4, you know what I mean? Just roughly they're both 4. Consistency, but be consistent with the decisions that you've made. If something for a player, if using this ship was a level 3 for a player one day, it's going to be level 3 for the player the next day, unless the circumstances have changed in some way. Mistakes, if you make mistakes, you can cover it up easy using the story. Routine actions are stuff that you don't have to roll for. Walking through doors or whatever. Other ways to judge difficulty, they give you some various ways. If you can't come up with like, I don't know how tough this would be, they give you some ways to kind of judge how tough something might be. And then they give you some advantages of using the Cypher system. I dig it. I'm going over this section quick because there's so much to it. If I slowed down and I really parsed it out, like this video would be 2 hours, 3 hours long, and I don't have time for that. So I'm just kind of just going over the titles, the titles within the chapter, and I might say a few words of comments on it. GM intrusions. You can introduce a GM intrusion. You're not just making the life of the player, the player character harder. You're doing it for the story, right? And it awards the players experience points. Using GM intrusion as a narrative tool. Using the GM intrusion as a resolution mechanic. If there's bad guys outside of the door and they're trying to go through the door, you can either roll for them to bust down the door, or you can just GM intrusion. They bust down the door, and then give a XP point to the character that was trying to hold the door or whatever. On to the next one. Using and not abusing GM intrusions. Hey. And then they give you and then intrusions through player rolls. When a player rolls a 1, you're gonna do a GM intrusion as well. GM intrusions that affect the whole group. If the GM intrusion is going to hit the whole group, you're going to give an XP to each person in the group, but those should be few and far between. And then they give you some example intrusions. Player intrusions, players can spend an XP and kind of take on a little bit of narrative control. And the rest of the rules and adjudicating, they're kind of saying like, your you're not a computer. You're going to be making decisions on a case-by-case basis. All right? And you're going to be using logic. They literally have a title, logic. Some of this, I mean, if you've been role playing for a while, if you've been GMing for a while, some of this you already know, but you know, I appreciate that they wrote this for veteran GMs and brand new GMs. You know what I mean? They're explaining when you want to do a dice roll. You know what I mean? A veteran GM might already know that, but they have it in here in case, you know, somebody's a brand new GM. I dig that. Using character types to define the setting. Like I said in a past video, they have character types, you know, warrior, warrior, adept, warrior, adept, explorer, and speaker, I think. You can use those as the types in your game, or you can rename those types to something that's more fitting for your game. So instead of just using the general term warrior, you could use barbarian or knight if you're doing like a fantasy game. And so using character types to define the setting, and they give you some guidance on that. Tying actions to stats, you know, you're doing something physical, it's tied to the might. Flow of information, like how are you revealing information to your players? You know, if they fail to notice something. Graduated success. So that's like, this is kind of optional, but you know, maybe there was a target number and they didn't quite meet the target number. So, you know, it could be a pass fail type thing, or it could be like, okay, you didn't learn everything, but you learned this much. Okay. Or, you know, if they really succeeded, hey, you were going to try to learn this much, and actually you got this extra information as well. And I think that's a pretty cool rule. I don't know if I'd use it in every game, but there's certain circumstances that I would probably throw it in there. Dealing with character abilities. So this is actually about like the ciphers. Ciphers, you know, we think of them as items or what have you, but ciphers are really a character ability that they get to use one time, right? So what's cool is, you know, you build your character and you get these abilities and things, and you always have those abilities, but then you get these ciphers that allow you these one-time use abilities, and they could be crazy. Maybe you teleport, you know, like 1,000 miles away. Like that ability might be way beyond your level and might not even be related to the class that you are, but you have that ability, you know, even though it's a one-time thing, you have that ability, and it just keeps things fresh because you're getting these new abilities, and some of them are super powerful or whatever, and it just keeps things fresh instead of like, okay, I use the same ability every time I attack, and it's just, you know, repeat. Now you get this really cool ability. It's one use, yeah, but it kind of breaks up any, you know, monotony. Let's put it that way. Optional rule, modifying abilities on the fly. You know, you can, you know, maybe spend an extra point or something and make it reach a little farther than what the ability normally would reach, and that sort of thing. Encouraging player creativity, ciphers. You know, they, like I said, cipher. You can even make your own ciphers, and they give you a little bit of guidance on that. Artifacts. Artifacts stick around, but they have a depletion rate, and they give you guidance on making your own artifacts, skills, and other abilities. That's the stuff that you keep. Character arcs. Now, you saw earlier the character arcs talking to the player. This is character arcs talking to the GM, and how you might use those in the game. Handling NPCs, NPC game stats, because NPCs are statted a little different than players. NPCs don't have the pools. They don't have the might, speed, intellect. They have a level and set hit points. NPCs in death. If you bring an NPC down to 0, do they die? Are they unconscious? Interactions with NPCs. You can either do it by the dice roll, or you can role play it, or a mixture of both. Languages. Does my dwarf speak Elven? I don't know. That's how you can determine that. NPC allies. How do you handle that? And then creatures. Creatures are handled similar to NPCs. And how you might build a creature, even though there's no set way to do it. It's really going off that level. You know what I mean? That 1 through 10 level. Optional rule: acting while under attack. Teaching the rules. If you're a GM and you have a party that's new to the Cypher system, how you would teach the Cypher system. A little guidance on the first few sessions, and running that for a new group. Running Cypher system combats, you're gonna want to be descriptive. For the most part, you don't want to slow things down. Crafting stories. Pacing is a big thing in a game. Pacing within an encounter, pacing within a game session, pacing within a story, pacing within a campaign. Description, how you want to describe the action, describing the world, and then they go through each genre, giving you guidance on how you might want to describe things in that genre, whether it be horror or fantasy or post-apocalyptic. Then you go into preparing for the game session. Cypher system, the claim to fame is that you don't have to spend hours preparing, and so the way that they give to prep is pretty minimal in this. They literally tell you, you pretty much need to make 3 things: a list of names that would be appropriate to the setting, a brief outline, and a list of ideas that you can just kind of randomly throw in there, that you just think are cool. And that's kind of the guidance that they give for prep. I mean, I'm not going to go through everything by the book, and you can read the prep section, but that's pretty minimal prep compared to what I have been doing for other games. You dig what I'm saying? Handling players. Sometimes you have a problem player, and they give you some guidance on that. Mature themes. Definitely watch that. Designing encounters. An encounter can be combat, and it can be, a role-playing situation, what have you. It doesn't have to be combat. Complex encounters. You can mix different types of encounters together and make a complex encounter. You don't want every encounter to be a complex encounter, but you do want some complex encounters thrown in there from time to time. Maybe it's a a role-playing encounter during a combat encounter. You know what I mean? You're trying to get information, but you're also trying to protect yourself from the the goblins that are popping up out of nowhere. Balancing encounters. The the Cypher system really isn't about CRs and figuring out XP budgets and all this. They give you some quick guidance on, for a tier 1 character, you know, this is probably what they can handle pretty well. But other than that, it's like, pretty much just story driven. And then they give you some guidance, like if your challenges are too easy, or if your challenges are too hard. Resolving encounters. You're not, as the GM, you're not really coming up with the how things work out. The players work that out. Challenging characters. If you want to make things more challenging, you can turn up the heat. High tier characters. Character death. How do you handle that? When a character dies, does the player just make a new character and that's it, final finito? Or are they not quite dead? Switching descriptions and foci after character creation. Like your character may have evolved in the course of the game. Maybe he started out with revenge on his mind, and then he got the revenge, and then he became a calm dude. So maybe his descriptor changes through the course of the game. That's fine. That can happen. You lose the benefit that you gained from the previous descriptor, and you get the new descriptor and all the benefits from that. But foci, you really only change once per character. Usually, I think they say right around tier 3 is acceptable. And once you switch foci, you keep the abilities from the previous foci, but then when you switch to the new foci, you only get abilities in the new foci moving forward. It's almost like multi-classing, but you can only switch foci once per character. Okay, so it's like you can't multi-class again. You might have started as an adept and or not an adept, sorry, that's a type. Oh my goodness. You might have started with bears a halo of fire, and now you howl at the moon or whatever. Your foci has changed. You keep the previous abilities, but from then on, after you take the new foci, you're only getting abilities from the new foci. I know I went over this whole section quick. I might have said a couple details wrong because I just got done. I don't read every word of a book. I read it quick because I can't sit down and just crank through text like that. But I'm just trying to give an overview of this big chapter. It's super important. It's super great, especially if you're new to Cypher system and GMing Cypher system, and you have to learn how to be a good GM in a more narrative focused role-playing game. This is like a masterclass for that. So I know I didn't do it justice. But I think you got the gist of it. It's a really great chapter. I when I went into it, I honestly expected it to be like every other Game Master chapter, that I've read in other books. But no, I think this one really was tailor fitted to the Cypher system, and I've GM'd like 2 Cypher system games so far. I'm going to be GMing a Numenera game coming up, and I can tell that that's material that I can use as I GM that game. and it's given me some pretty good pointers. And then after the game master chapter, there's an example of play, which some people, myself included, especially myself, I really need to see an example of play to really grasp some things. And so they do give an example of play. After that, though, is the back matter, which is just the index. And then I've shown this before, but this is the campaign design worksheet. Name the campaign, the genre, the GM. So the types that you fit to your setting, and then this would be the types that they are in the book, any modifications to those types. And then here you would check the descriptors that fit your game. So if your game is fantasy, you can check the descriptors that would fit in a fantasy setting, or if your game is modern, you would check the descriptors that would fit in a modern setting. And then those are the ones that are available in your game. And then the same thing with the foci. The foci that are available in a superhero game, likely different than what would be available in a horror game. And so you check what foci are available in your game, and then you can give your character or your players the sheet, and they know what descriptors they can choose from and what foci they can choose from. That is really super awesome, especially when you're doing like a universal game system. Sometimes there's not an easy way to tell your character or to tell your players, look, these options are available in our game, but these ones are not, because the options that are available, they make sense for the setting that we're playing in, and these other options, they don't make sense. You wouldn't take starfighter piloting in a fantasy game. It just doesn't make sense. And this makes it really easy to see what options are available. And then over here you have the character sheet. It's landscape, and it's front and back. Pretty minimalist. Kind of like that. If you've seen the Numenera character sheet, the Numenera character sheet is very artistic, very intricate, very design heavy, and it looks cool, but it's not for everybody. So having this character sheet that's very minimalist, I think is super awesome, because you can fit it to almost any game. If it was looked like parchment paper or whatever, it would fit more like a fantasy game. But this is pretty genre neutral, I think. Kind of leans a little maybe sci-fi if I look at it, but I think that it would even be acceptable to take this and even use it in your other Cypher system games. Like if somebody was having trouble with the Numenera character sheet, I think you could probably just take this character sheet and have them make their Numenera character on this, because it is more minimalist and compared to the Numenera character sheet. And so yeah, that is Cypher System Rulebook Part 3. That was the Game Master section. My final thoughts on the Cypher System Rulebook is, wow, I really like it. To me, they packed so much into one book. I mean, this is the only book that you need to play. I mean, you can get the white books and all that, the add-on to it, but this is the only book that you technically need to play the Cypher system. And you can build so much with just this book, especially with the genre chapter, the genre section that they give you to help build out any kind of setting that you can think of, especially in the genres that they included. And then they give you the bestiary with a whole, range of creatures from fantasy to sci-fi. I mean, and then the Game Master section being superb, and well, I think I said what, 92 pages of abilities, you know, so you can really make that character that you want to play. It's it is it is a pretty awesome book. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that's and the art's good. I mean, the design is nice. Um, you know, I'm gonna be spending more time playing Cypher games, running Cypher games, and I want to see how Cypher does in different genres. You know, I'm gonna be running Numenera. Um, I ran a couple sci-fi adventures, sort of. Like one was more like a fantasy adventure, but they used sci-fi characters in it. Um, so I'm going to be getting more and more acquainted and more experience with the Cypher system. But just right now, looking at it, I'm really impressed. I like it, and and the so the only thing I would say is if you're new to role playing, I wouldn't I wouldn't turn to this immediately. Okay, if you're brand new to role playing, um, this probably isn't the book for you because this is more for an experienced role player in the idea that you're going to take this is like a universal game system. You're going to take this and you're going to build a setting, build a world, and um, you're going to set the player options and all that. Um, and so the GM is kind of crafting the game that he or she wants to run. That might be a little much for someone who's brand new to role playing games. So I'm not saying that you have to have years and years of experience, but I'm just saying if you know if you're in your first week of role playing games, this probably isn't the book for you. But if you have some experience, it doesn't even have to be all that much. It could be just 6 months. If you got like 6 months of experience and you're like, hey, I got this idea for a world that I really want to run, and I don't see any other game around that does that world really well. I want to try Cypher system out. Well, you can take this book and you can make that world, you can make that setting, and you can, set the player options and all that, and you can do that and run that game that you want to run. So yeah, that's what I have to say about it. You can check it out over at Monte Cook Games, and I should have said this at the start. They did send me a complimentary copy so that I could share this with you guys. So thank you, Monte Cook Games. I I don't know. I really like the system. I like um, all the versatility. I like I'm having tons of ideas of things I want to try with it, and I read some of the foci, and they get really cool. One is like has a magic ally or something, and I talked about it in a previous video. That one's pretty cool, and I don't know. I really like it. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. If you've played Cypher System or a Cypher System game like Numenera or whatever, please leave your comments below. Let me know about your thoughts on Cypher System. Thank you for watching, and as always, hey, grab some friends and roll some dice. It's Dusty and Dice, baby.